All right, and as we told you, Ron Paul is getting ready to take the stage. We'll turn it over to the Roper Auditorium now as you tune in for his speech.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that very nice welcome. Sounds like a lot of friends here today. I want to introduce my wife of 55 years, Carol, sitting over here. And one of our 18 grandchildren, Linda. Appreciate very much you coming out. There wasn't much notice that I would be coming through, but I'm delighted to see so many and so much enthusiasm because there's some very important things going on in the world. All elections are important, and sometimes every election is the most important in history. Well, I don't usually say that, but I do think there are economic and political things going on right now, whether they will be solved or improved or what will happen with the election. But I do know there's a lot of big issues coming together. In the past, I used to talk a lot about, we can't spend all this money because all we do then is we pass the debt on to the next generation. And some people still say that, and there's some truth to it. But I've quit saying it and quit emphasizing it because I think we're the next generation. I think we have to face our problems. We're paying for this debt. That's why the economy's in a very weak state, and why the wars keep going on and our civil liberties are being violated. So we have to address that. It's this generation, it's our time, and that is why it's so important. But the magnificent thing to me about what's happening in the country to address these problems is not so much, matter of fact, what's happening in Washington is in many ways irrelevant because they're not doing the right things, they're doing the wrong things. But where the really great things that are happening outside of Washington, the people are waking up and they're sick and tired of what we're getting. But when the people wake up, Washington will eventually change. For the many, many decades, Washington has done, they have just essentially reflected what the people wanted. The people, fully endorsed all the wars. They fully endorsed the Federal Reserve. They fully endorsed the entitlement system, believing it could go on forever and ever. But it's come to an end. The entitlement system is bankrupt. Matter of fact, what we have to challenge basically in the entitlement system is challenge the notion that an entitlement, as the word is used now, is not a right. People aren't entitled to somebody else's property. That's what... But I'll tell you what we are entitled to, and this is what we have to emphasize. The fact that our lives and our liberty come from our Creator. We are entitled to our lives, and we are entitled to our liberties, and we are to be responsible for our lives. But under those circumstances, if it is our life and if it is our liberty, we ought to have the ability and the right to keep the fruits of our labor. So this is what's happened over the many years, our really shift in attitude about defending the republic and shifting into a pure democracy. It's been over 100 years or so that this has been going on. And we've accepted these notions that we should have an income tax back in 1913. And it was guaranteed that if you have an income tax, they're going to collect a lot of taxes, and what will happen? Government will grow. And that's why the founders didn't give us an income tax. So when the republic comes back, we won't have an income tax any longer. Of course, when the republic comes back and we respect our Constitution, we will have sound money. We will have a gold and silver standard as is in the Constitution. We will not have bills of credit, and we won't have a Federal Reserve System. the basic flaw in the income tax and in many ways with the Federal Reserve, the assumption is made that the government owns us and they own all the fruits of our labor, and we're allowed to keep that portion that they permit us to keep under certain circumstances. And this is a bad assumption because, therefore, we give up our right to our life. We should be able to own our lives, but we have to be responsible with that life. We have to assume responsibility. If we mess up, we're supposed to assume those responsibilities. If we do well, we ought to be rewarded. That's what freedom is all about, and I think we've lost that, and that has to be renewed if we expect to once again have a society that is based on peace and prosperity. But it's the lack of respect for the rule of law and the lack of respect for the Constitution that has really gotten us into this mess. And we were warned. It isn't like this is a new idea. We were warned by those who wrote the Constitution. They said, be very careful, because if we are not a moral people and we choose to disobey the law, no matter how well the Constitution might be written, it won't work. And I think the Constitution had some flaws, obviously. So therefore, the Constitution was deeply flawed, and we failed to follow it. And that is why we're into this condition right today. For instance, we mentioned the tax issue. That was not part of the original Constitution. Then we had the banking problems that we've gotten because we have a Federal Reserve System. But just think about how we go to war. How much power have we given to the president? I want to be president. But I don't want to be president to run your life. I don't think I can. I don't want to be president because I think I know how to run the economy. Only the people know how to run the economy, and they're the ones who know how to spend their money. And also, a president who's a truly constitutional president would never embark on a war without explicit permission from the Congress and the people with the declaration of war. If we have an enemy, we declare the war, fight it, and get it over with, and come on. But sadly, our presidents in recent decades have gone to war. Matter of fact, essentially since World War II. They have gone to war on their own. They do not get explicit declarations of war. But worse than that, lately, they don't even mention it. They don't even debate it. They don't even go to the Congress. They go to places like United Nations and NATO and get the authority. So they have undermined our national security. We are not a stronger nation. We do not have stronger national security, strong national defense by belonging to these organizations that dictate to us what we do in international affairs. That should be the business of the American people and the American government, not the United Nations. We have now gotten ourselves involved in maintaining an empire. Some people resent the fact that we will call it an empire. But what is it if we're in 138 countries with military bases? What is it when we have, the number of bases are growing so rapidly we can't keep up with it. I used to say 700, 800, then it was 800 to 900. Some people now list that we have military facilities in maybe 1,000 places in the world. And, of course, the hottest spot in the world today is the Middle East. And the other day, some of you may have seen this on the Internet, they had a map of Iran. Iran, is supposed to attack us pretty soon if we're not careful. Well, they had a map of Iran, and we had 48 bases surrounding Iran, and then they say that we better be ready. That is exactly what they said to us when they wanted us to go into Iraq. There were no threats by Iraq. They ginned that up, and then they said we did illegally. Since we've been fighting over there these past 11 years, over 8,000 Americans have died. We have spent trillions of dollars. Our national debt is up now $4 trillion because of the foreign expenditures in that region. and it's not ending. The proposals, and every once in a while you say, well, we're going to cut back on such and such from the military-industrial budget. But they aren't cuts. They're just cuts on these wild proposed automatically increases over the next decades. So right now, there's nobody in Washington, no other candidates that's advocating real cuts to the budget. And across the board, I say that we should cut $1 trillion out of the budget in 1 year is what we need. For those who say, well, wouldn't that weaken the economy? If the government's not spending that money, wouldn't that weaken the economy? No, it does exactly the opposite. When government takes money from the people, and then that means the people don't have it to spend, then they spend it, and they usually do harm with the money. How often do they do things very productive? They take productive resources, put them in the government. Then they might write regulations and have bureaucrats come in and take over education, take over medicine, and do all these inefficient things. So it actually is a strong negative when they do that. Now, if you can return $1 trillion to the people and let the people make the decision, then we could have economic growth. When you don't have economic growth, or you try to repair the problems that have come about because of the Federal Reserve and the tax system and the regulatory system, when they take it over, they actually make things that much worse. But what else happens? When there's easy credit system and this system of money that's designed in secret by the Federal Reserve, guess who benefits from the bubbles? There's the rich people on Wall Street and the people who run the mortgages, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and the military-industrial complex, the politicians. They all benefit by this creation of new money. And then when the crisis comes, they say, oh, there's a depression coming. A depression is coming. So we have to bail out the people who are suffering. But what did they do? The Federal Reserve bailed out Goldman Sachs and the other banks and the military-industrial complex. And then the whole pretense of why we have the entitlement system, give everybody a house, give everybody a free education and free medical care. Guess what?